somebody said, well, why do you write these scary books? And he looked at the interviewer and said, what makes you think I have any choice?
Yeah, right.
And I think that's what you guys are saying too. You don't always have the choice you think you would.
In the back.
Best evil laugh. Best evil laugh.
You mean of a character in fiction, or are we going to have an evil laugh off?
The second.
the latter. No, that's also going to be in the alley after the show.
Once you hear it, it's too late.
All right, I have two more questions to be on the test. If you guys don't have any, no, that's it. Oh, who was it was talking about? Have you all read Gardner's book, The Art of Fiction? Or people have heard of this book, right?
Yep.
But he talks about one of you guys, and they're was talking about when you're reading, the reader of a book is sort of trapped between the real reality and the reality of the book, and you're kind of negotiating in there. And he talked about reading a narrative fiction creates a sort of a dream state that you're in, you know. Which one of you was that? Was that you?
It might have been. That all sounds right to me. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking earlier today about how good books really are. They're dreams. Like it's a dream in a box. I think the mental state is most closely approximated precisely because, and this is perhaps one of the many ways in which they differ from games. So much is unspecified. You know, the way you know things in dreams, and you wake up and you're like, why did I think I was, in Antigua or whatever it is? But you knew it, and I think the same thing happens in books all the time. That's the trick.
Yeah.
Most books I read are far more pleasant than most of the dreams I end up having.
Well, yes, please.
This is for Austin. In your bio, there's a ton of video games that you've been associated with. And one of them was Deus Ex, which is a huge favorite of mine.
It's called what?
Deus Ex. I was wondering, do you have anything to say about that? I was wondering what was your contribution to that?
Deus Ex, a video game released in I think 2000, which was I contributed little enough to it so that I can say that it's a really good game. I came in about 6 months before it was done, so I was one of 3 writers on it. So I wrote a lot of dialogue in it, and I worked on some of the mission logic. It was an awfully good game. It was a dark sort of cyberpunk game about conspiracies in the future. I think it sticks in people's memories because it did have a nicely open narrative. It did allow you to kind of do what you wanted in the fictional world more than most, and it was a really nicely sort of envisioned near future cyberpunk. Probably it's not so much of general interest to the whole audience, so you could ask me about it. But it was awesome to work on, and it's a good memory, and it's probably the game I get asked about most.
What's the story of the game?
As best I can remember, this having been done in 2000, you're kind of a cyborg agent for a government agency in a world sort of racked by plague and poverty, but gradually you start to realize that not all of your employers are quite on the level. And at some point you have to sort of decide what to do about that. It's one of those games that uses choice in a really good, sort of powerful way.
Now, let me ask a question about the game thing, my son is actually a game designer, but I don't play them and don't know about them, but I noticed in the New York Times arts section, there's as much attention paid to games as there is to dance or theater these days. Yeah. Do you read the game reviews? Do you keep up with them?
I read some of them, although, I mean, the Times coverage is more for the general readership, and I tend to read the ones for the really sad, intense people.
Well, imagine you were
Yes,
a
no,
regular person.
I
What
do-
would you think?
It's a very thought experiment.
I mean, I do read the Times coverage somewhat, and I think it's improving. They got a nice little paper there. I mean, it's funny because publishing this book is becoming an experiment in how mainstream are video games. Like, how many people actually play them out in the world? Do people who buy novels play games? Do people who play games buy novels? Will anyone buy this novel? It's becoming an experiment. I mean, and why aren't games mainstream? Is it because they haven't? Is it because they're too difficult to pick up? Is it because they haven't mastered like a more interesting or fuller range of emotion? Why are they such a niche product still? I mean, I'm not sure what the question is inside your question. You know, it's clear that games are something powerful, and they're going to be something that matters to everybody in the 21st century. They haven't quite arrived at that yet. I think the New York Times is covering them because they want to have some people in place in case anything does happen that feels sort of fundamentally sort of powerful and artistic, which I think is starting to happen more sort of, I think, on the fringes in the indie scene, the kind of equivalent Sundance equivalent than in the mainstream.
Huh. I remember when I worked in publishing back in the 70s and 80s in New York, and I remember one time the publisher, it was sort of one of these moments of truth. We're in a meeting, and and this is mass market paperback, and she said, if we sell 1 million copies, this is great. She said, and we're called mass market. She said, but don't get deceived. If a movie or a record sells 1 million copies, it's a flop.
Yeah.
You know, this is publishing books is a niche market. You know, it's a very small market, and I've often thought of that. I mean, you know, when you say games are they're a small, but I think you're right about the Times. Maybe they're thinking,
well,
that something's going to develop.
You remember when Mouse came out, right? You remember the Art Spiegelman graphic novel, right? Everybody's waiting for Mouse. Everybody's waiting for the Pulitzer Prize winning video game that they feel is sort of powerful and relevant in a way that connects and feels seriousness, right? They're waiting for that moment, and it hasn't occurred yet, but everyone feels like it's coming.
And I remember in science fiction, you could even go to ReaderCon, or where all the science fiction writers get together, and everybody's thinking about this kind of interactive science fiction, where you're gonna cooperate with the author, and you know, that's not what anybody wants. They wanted an author to, you know, so it didn't quite happen like that.
Yeah.
But,
well, it turns out that, you know, I think, and this is actually something that it's a theme that kind of threads through Austin's book, but this notion of total interactivity, like you can, the full sandbox of the world. I mean, there are games like that, and some of them work well and are successful. Most, it's almost like it just all kind of like dissipates into nothing. The really good game design is its design, right? It's like you're saying, they actually constrain your choices in very clever ways so that you feel like you have this full palette of options. In fact, you are being sort of led along by the nose. I mean, I think of like level design, like sort of level design in these really incredible almost photorealistic 3D games. I mean, it's a discipline in and of itself, right? To make you feel like you're in this expansive space, like where shall I go next? Well, perhaps I'll go down by the docks. And the game designer's like, yeah, I knew you were going to go down by the docks. I just made you go down by the docks.
please.
Just wanted to confirm your statement. I'm a professional level designer. You hit the nail on the head.
Please.
Are you all working on any new novels?